Welcome to CEO Zone's Meet the Member series. CEO Zones is a private online community designed exclusively for chief executives with over 1 billion in annual revenue and professional directors who are navigating high-stakes strategy and global decision making. Today, I am thrilled to welcome my friend, former client, and he was a former client before he became a friend, Matt Carstens, a respected, results driven chief executive with nearly 3 decades of experience in agriculture, ag tech, e commerce, fintech, and the global supply chain, including in his tenure as chief executive officer of Conduit Ag, Landis Cooperative, one of Iowa's largest farmer owned cooperatives, and as SVP of Land O'Lakes. And I'm sure everyone has a Land O'Lakes near them. Matt is known for his insight for transformational leadership and his ability to drive growth within complex competitive environments. And as you can see to the viewers, he's already bored. Get on with it, Bill. He has complex environments, leveraging his expertise in innovation, sales, and mergers and acquisition. He's a thoughtful, progressive leader and a strong advocate for the rural communities and the role of the American farmer in the future of sustainable agriculture. Welcome, Matt. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thanks, Bill. I'm glad we got that part out of the way. That's always the uncomfortable part. So the rest is
I
easy
hate
from
that
here, I'm
part.
guessing.
Yep. So you and I go back to the mid 2000s, so I'm going to call it 10 years roughly, when you were
Mm.
kind enough to hire my firm and we did a supply chain transformation for you. And that led
Mhm.
to your company improving its EBITDA and having a great success rate to where Land O'Lakes came down and acquired you and your shareholders. And everything I could see was everybody was real happy. So I'll give that background. And then I guess I would ask you, how would you describe your personal leadership philosophy and how do you ensure that your philosophy kind of gets through the entire organization and becomes part of the culture?
Yeah, well, I appreciate all that. And it was a good journey that we had there back with the crop nutrients group at United Suppliers that led to the eventual merger of Land O'Lakes. And when you talk about, and you hear this all the time, the philosophy of leadership and that, I don't sit and pretend that I've got any kind of special magic. In fact, there'd be a lot that would argue otherwise. But I think for me, it really comes down to three things. One is accountability in a macro type of environment, right? Because there's a lot of ways to get to the end result. And what I want a team that I'm with is to really focus on the journey that is best aligned with where we're going as a company, that they see as the best path there. And there's no right or wrong answer, but there has to be accountability that the end goal is achieved. And that accountability can get really dicey with some individuals, and that's been a learning lesson I've had over time is the word accountability. Everybody claims they want it, but when you have it, that gets a little nerve wracking that you've got to make the budget. You've got to perform on a budget that matches what you've invested in the business, and
Right.
and then you've got to be able to deliver those results and do the forecasting. And so accountability, tied in that kind of a macro environment is step one. And then two and three kind of go together for me, Bill, which is speed and agility. In this fast-paced world, like whether you're in ag or food or energy or really anything today, you're dealing with a global economy. And there are some markets globally that move very fast.
Mm.
And you have to keep pace with that. No matter what your financial structure is, or what your size of your organization is, or which countries you are operate in or don't, it kind of all is one. You have to see it no matter what you are, of what the bigger picture is. And speed and agility really has been one that has played well over time. You can go as fast as any company wants to, as long as there's agility to continue to adjust to the market. Every day we wake up, there's a new announcement that affects
Yep.
every business on this planet. Every day you go to bed, there's been an announcement that affects every business on this planet. So we've got to realize that sitting and what we were able to do 20, 30 years ago of really put this tight business plan together with the roadmaps laid out and able to execute that fairly easily in an environment today where you've got means of instant communication and social media and all the things that allow a message to be spread so quickly. Speed and agility has to be a part. But some cultures and some environments just aren't built for that. And being able to recognize that and deal with that accordingly has been a learning lesson I've had over time. So definitely accountability tied to speed and agility. Those would be three of the main drivers that I see in today's world that I'm a fan of and believe contributes quite nicely.
Yeah, you reminded me of one of my failures. One day, Michael Dell argued with me, and I kept saying supply chain cost is the driver. And he said, no, it's all about the speed of the supply chain. And that was in the 80s or 90s, I forget when I bumped into Michael. But in any event, turned out speed probably does win. So thank you for that, Matt.
There you go. I'm sorry to bring up a bad memory, but it
Well,
is
no, it
true.
just
How's
flat,
that?
Grandpa had a flash moment there. Where did I
There you
need to
go.
learn that? And where did I get taught a lesson? Yeah. So thank
Yeah,
you. So
you bet.
also attracting top talent is everyone's job. And how do we nurture that relationship? How do we attract that? So from an executive team, because you've been in positions where you've had to, let's say, improve, enhance, optimize the executive team, how would you foster collaboration with those newer senior leaders? And then how do they drive that down through the organization?
Yeah, I had one of the CEOs I worked for when we were doing one of the three startups I've done say that meeting cadence was important. And I was like, if we were startup, remote, let it happen. We can do Teams meetings. This is before COVID. And the truth was he was right that the cadence of meetings in person and getting that team to come together and have those challenging debates was truly essential. And I think another piece of it is having that in an environment that people can be proud of. A lot of folks want to debate, whether things that you do as a company is important. The get-togethers, the office space, whatever the case may be. And I'm going to tell you from recruiting and from that point of getting the team together and be able to meet and be somewhere where you can be proud of and call that home, whether at home is a couple thousand square feet or a couple 100,000 square feet, doesn't matter. It's there is an important component of that. Now, there's no doubt the world is becoming more remote and allowing people to be able to live and work as they want is an important part, but we can't lose sight of that connection, that being able to see each other, have those debates, and not doing it through a computer screen is also a balancing act, that teeter-totter that you've got to strike that right chord with any company, and defining that in the culture. I think it's important so people can decide if that works for them or not. Some of the work I'm doing today with Solve Business Partners, it's all remote. Some of these companies don't have an office yet, and I can tell you that is a long journey to success without that place that you can call home. And it sounds great to put stuff out on social media how it's not important, but the truth is, it is. It helps speed that culture along and helps make better decisions, and it gives the employees a place of home and know that it's there and that it's a part of what they do and how they do it.
Hmm. Totally agree. So another kind of trick question, I'll say, based on your experience, what are the non-negotiable principles when you kind of set up your 100-day plan? You're the new CEO in an organization. What are those couple principles you got to get established right away?
Well, I think first is it's you've got to get out there and see the people, whether it's employees, the customers, any other centers of influence. Being able to say anything about the company without really understanding where that business is at with, again, internally with employees, externally with customers, and those that feed that driver is extremely important to that. And then next on that, I think, is coming back with the message of what the employees can expect. And don't be afraid that there's going to have to be departures, because not everyone's going to see it that way. If it was great before, they wouldn't have changed CEOs, right? Could have been a retirement. More than likely, even a retirement leads to changes of that business to set it on a path that's a different or advanced trajectory with today's changes in the marketplace and the environment we operate in. So being able to take those learnings in the first 30 to 60 and come back on that 60 to 90-day window and say, here's what we're going to be and here's why we're going to be it, and have the board approval and all that, and be able to really stick to that, I think, are important steps along that way. But it's got to start with the ground truthing, not what you've heard, but what you see, and what people across the table from you have been able to agree, or even through a screen have been able to agree that this is what's going on and this is what's working, this is what's not. And setting that tone will be, the difference between a successful start and one that may drag for years to come if not careful in setting that tone.
Right. You touched on this, but I would like, so our audience of CEOs, professional directors, uh, they may see this video and say, hey, Matt is somebody I need to get introduced to this board or to this hiring committee. So I'm going to come back to this in a different way. But as the CEO, how do you balance that pressure of delivering immediate results, short term results, having a long term investment, set the vision, and then begin to thrive over the next 5 to 10 years? And I know you've done this several times. So I'm not asking the question, I'm asking the question for the audience here. So,
Well, you definitely have to look at what the short term needs are, and let those that have been running it continue to make any small adjustments. But it's got to be small, right? I mean, there's nothing you're going to solve in the first 30, even 60 days, more than likely. But after that, I think you've every business, it's about the long game, and these things are marathons, not sprints. So there's a sprint component, but the game is a long-term game. So setting the tone for what has to happen right away, that are things that have been maybe out there dragging or waiting for the new CEO to be announced. Great, let's get those answered, and then spend that 30 to 60 days. And maybe it only takes 20, maybe it only takes 45, but really understanding where that business is at, right? Because if there's such immediate needs that have to be addressed immediately, clearly there's something deeper that's in that longer term, or the longer journey that the business has to go on to solve and find out. Because that team should be able to run that business in the short term, with whatever questions need answered, while the new CEO or president or even the new executive leadership team is out trying to understand what's going on, why it's going on, and thinking through that transformation that's needed. Whether it's radical or minor, it doesn't matter. How do you transform that business so you can set that tone, at that 90-day mark or sooner, with the team, to say, this is what we're going to be, this is why we're going to be it, and these are the data points that we're looking at, and feedback that we got from customers, from employees, from centers of influence, and so on. So I think it's definitely a balance, but the bigger part has to be on the long term. Trying to do something and getting absorbed in the 30, 60 will lead to a disaster 90, 120, 365 and beyond, right? So you've got to really try to keep that away and answer the questions that have to be answered, while setting that pace for the future, that really turns that company around in a way that's long term and that they can build upon for years to come.
yeah, that was a good answer, a long answer, and I'm sure that some of the audience will go, I'm going to call Matt, which will give you out his number at the end here, but I'm going to call Matt and pick his brain on some things. But so my next
Yeah.
question is around, you led a significant change with a very large multi-location organization as its CEO, and you brought in a lot of new innovation. Can you kind of help us think through how you calculated the risk for the new business model, the new product, the market expansion, and what was the ultimate outcome?
Yeah, I think innovation is critical in every company. You see it all around us. And when you see things like I tell the story, we started with, five and dimes in our life, Bill, and then you went to, a Walmart or a Target to name a few. Then they went to super centers, and then they went to Amazon. And I'm like, Amazon-ish will be the climax of what I'll see in my life. And it wasn't long after came DoorDash, where now they're delivering from local stores to your house in less than an hour. And so I don't know what happens next, but I don't think we've seen the end yet. And this is happening right in front of us. So, as I look back at the time I've had with various companies, there's no doubt you have to stay on the cutting edge. As Jack Welch says, when the change outside of your company is greater than within, the end is near. No truer words were spoken. And I don't think he knew how true it was going to be 30 years later, 40 years later. And I can't sit here today and tell you how true that's going to be 75 to 100 years in the future. But it's definitely upon us that you have to be able to meet the needs of efficiency and technology and innovation, and waiting for it to just drive your company or drive the industry will put you on the bleeding edge, as they like to say. And that's not where you need to be. The hard part of that somewhat is the customer, but is more so the team. And do you actually have the team that wants to move from the past to the future? And even when you're having success, what most people, this, Bill, is when you came in and worked with us, you could see it and you talked about it. When you're at, at a peak, and we had a really good run at United on a marketing program called Alignment, but that's when you want to make the change. And when you have to, it's harder yet, right? You don't have a
Right.
choice at that point. So by then, you don't, the team really doesn't have a lot of options. You've ran through the options and have to go. But when you want to make those changes is when you're having the success. But that will be a harder point because you're going to have employees go, nope, we don't need to. Nope, we got this. Nope, it's all good. Why would we do it now? And people don't understand that that's the best time to make those changes. Yes, it may look funny, it may look unnecessary, it may be whatever. But remember, those companies that are having to sat in that same spot X years before and watched it fall all the way behind to where it's a must do. And at that point, you run a 50-50 chance whether you can actually do it or not. But when you're at the top of your game and continuing to push those envelopes and trying things differently, bringing in new innovation, listening to the customers, adopting and helping the customer see the value in it, that's when that time is here and now. And it's just it's so hard to see. I remember like when companies would go through tough times, that's when they took some of the customer engagement out, and you're going, boy, that's when you need it the most, right? Don't take the customer engagement out. Like how many times, Billy, say, well, we got to lock down travel. That'll work out well. Lockdown, going to see the people that are paying the bill. That what could possibly go wrong there? But it's what every company has to sort through is, and the board of that company. Can you stomach that? That you've really got to put more to your face to the customer and what that innovation technology means. So it's backwards of what traditional business has done, but you see it so often. Show me a company today it's having to merge or sell, and I'll show you a company that when they were at their best chose to ride that out. And it's unfortunate for the customers, for the employees, for the organization as a whole. But employees, customers, boards, CEOs, I mean, it can be a hard transition to try to go, yeah, we got to do this and we need to fight that fight. And you've seen it. That's, what you've spent a lot of your career doing.
Right. You made me think of one of your large suppliers in your background that
Mhm.
all the stock analysts said, "Wow, this is the fair-haired child. It's going forward." And meanwhile, the CEO is whispering in my team's ear, "This is great, but what about 4 years from now?" And just went out and killed it again for another 10 years. So,
Yeah.
um, being on top of your game does not mean sitting still. That's for sure. So. Maybe
Yeah.
one last question. We didn't get into any deep details yet, but you have a tremendous experience across the ag and tech and fintech. Is there any, and you kind of hit some of the high points, but I'm going to go just one level deeper if you don't mind. What are
Mhm.
some of the technology or sustainability or market dynamics that are out there right now that the CEO of another ag company or a fintech or a private equity managing director of a portfolio, any little tip you could give us today?
Yeah, I got to tell you, I did a podcast last week for another group, and I got to tell you, when you take fertility, which is a big driver of cost, a big driver of sustainability in ag, a big driver of what consumers and that whole supply chain from farm to consumer has to really think about. It will be shocking to this world how we're going to fertilize crops in a way more sustainable, more logistical efficient, and much lower cost way in the months and years ahead. And it's coming. It's going to be exciting to see. And I didn't know this stuff was even out there, but what smart minds in countries across this globe have come up with, from a physicist standpoint, from an engineering and chemistry standpoint, there is some really neat things that I think will solve a lot of the challenges that are out there from both the ag side with the cost of production, the supply chain, tariffs, all that kind of stuff that affects it, to the consumer, to where we're going to be using some way different technology that will truly help consumers feel good about the sustainability that's happening on the farm, particularly around fertility. And then I think the other is AI. AI is got such a path in agriculture, where having that agronomist in the pocket of the farmer will be so helpful. Being able to buy things so much easier, with confidence that its matches and the mix rate's good. And so I think fertility and how we're going to fertilize an AI will be shocking to the world in the next several years, and sit back and enjoy the ride because it's going to be phenomenal.
Have to agree with you, and I'll make the comment. The stock analyst that works with us, he said, Caterpillar and John Deere are really AI companies. And you kind of think about that for a second. You giggle, you choke, you go, well, no, they're a manufacturer. But what they're doing with AI out in the field to help the farmer is just phenomenal. So I get the
It is.
analyst point, but I don't know that they're ready to go there yet. I would say ask Caterpillar. Do they think they're an AI company? Probably not. But as we bring this episode of Meet the Member to a close, I want to ensure you have Matt's contact information. His LinkedIn profile is Matt D. Carstens. His phone number, which he's willing to give out, is 515-490-2981. And if there's anything that you can't find him for, I said it wrong, or we put it in the end here and I type it wrong, whatever it might be, just reach out to CEO Zones. Bill Forster at CEO Zones is my email, and I would be glad to put you in touch with Matt. Matt's been a client and a long term friend, so we really thank you for being our guest today, Matt, at Meet the Member. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
And I guess I should say thank you for being a member of our online community. Thank you very
Absolutely.
much. All right. Have a great day.